Ladies and gentlemen, there is a presence that moves through all things. It is unseen, yet deeply felt. It is silent, yet it speaks in the language of life itself. This presence has been called by many names, but its essence remains the same. It is the Spirit of God, always in motion, always guiding, always here. For the Spirit of God moves, not in the past, not in the future, but here, in this very moment. And when we truly see this, we are transformed. The Spirit of God is not something distant, nor is it confined to a particular time, place, or person. It is ever present, moving through all of existence in ways that often go unnoticed. This divine presence does not come and go. It is not something that arrives when we are worthy and disappears when we are not. Rather, it is always here, always available, always flowing through everything. To recognize this movement, we must first learn the art of stillness. Stillness does not mean inactivity or passivity. It is not the absence of movement in the physical sense, but rather the absence of resistance within. Most people live their lives caught in an endless stream of thoughts, worrying about the future, replaying the past, analyzing, judging and labeling everything they encounter. In this mental noise, the subtle movement of the Spirit goes unnoticed. It is not because the Spirit is not there, but because our awareness is clouded by the constant chatter of the mind. When we learn to be still, not merely outwardly, but inwardly, we create space for something deeper to be felt. In that space, we become aware of a presence that is always here. It is the same presence that makes the trees grow, the stars shine, the waves rise and fall. It is the essence of life itself, moving in perfect harmony, untouched by the distractions of the human mind. This stillness is not something that needs to be created. It is already within us. However, it is often obscured by the mind's constant need to grasp, define, and control. The moment we stop trying to hold on to thoughts, the moment we stop seeking answers outside ourselves, we begin to sense the quiet power of the Spirit moving within us. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It simply is. And when we align ourselves with it, we begin to experience a profound sense of peace. Many people associate divine movement with dramatic experiences, visions, revelations, but the deepest movement of the Spirit is often quiet and subtle. It is found in the simple act of breathing, in the stillness of a sunrise, in the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. It is in the moments when time seems to stop, and all that remains is pure presence. To attune ourselves to this movement, we must cultivate deep awareness. This means observing without labeling, listening without interpreting, and being without needing to explain. When we do this, we begin to notice that the Spirit of God is not something separate from us. It is not an external force that occasionally intervenes in our lives. It is the very foundation of our being. When we embrace this awareness, everything changes. The restless mind begins to settle. Fear loses its grip. The struggles we once resisted no longer seem as overwhelming because we recognize that beneath every experience, there is a deeper intelligence at work. This intelligence does not force or impose. It flows effortlessly, guiding all things toward balance and harmony. In this realization, we discover that we do not have to chase the presence of God, nor do we need to strive to be worthy of it. The Spirit moves through us as naturally as the breath moves in and out of our lungs. The only thing required is to be still enough to notice. As we deepen our connection with this ever-present stillness, we begin to see the world differently. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Simple moments are filled with meaning. We no longer feel disconnected from life, for we recognize that we are part of its divine flow. The Spirit of God moves, not in some distant realm, not in a place we must search for, but here, now, in this very moment. And when we open ourselves to it, we find that it has been here all along. The movement of the Spirit of God is not something that can be fully grasped by the mind. It exists beyond the realm of thought, beyond words, beyond any human concept. Yet, throughout history, people have tried to define it, explain it, and fit it into frameworks of belief and understanding. While these efforts may provide some guidance, they can also become obstacles to true experience. The Spirit of God does not belong to any one idea, doctrine, or philosophy. It is not limited to what we can describe or comprehend. It simply is, moving in ways that transcend intellectual understanding. The human mind seeks certainty, It looks for definitions, structures, and boundaries. It wants to label things, to categorize them, to fit them into a logical system. But the Spirit of God cannot be confined in this way. The moment we try to grasp it intellectually, we reduce it to something smaller than it is. We make it into an object of thought rather than an experience of presence. This is why many spiritual traditions emphasize direct experience over mere belief. True understanding does not come from accumulating knowledge, but from entering a state of awareness where the divine movement can be felt rather than analyzed. Thoughts are limited. They are shaped by language, by past experiences, by cultural conditioning. But the Spirit of God moves in a way that is limitless. It is not something we can capture in words or theories, no matter how profound those words may be. It is not something we can fully explain to another person, because it is beyond explanation. It can only be known directly, in the depth of silence, in the space where the mind becomes still. When we rely solely on thought to understand the divine, we risk creating separation. We see God as something outside of us, something distant, something to be sought or attained. But in truth, the Spirit is already here, already moving through us, already present in every breath, every moment. The only thing that keeps us from realizing this is our attachment to the mind's endless need to define and control. This is why surrender is so important. To surrender does not mean to give up or to become passive. It means to let go of the need to intellectually grasp what is beyond thought. It means to open ourselves to experience, to presence, to being. When we do this, we begin to sense the movement of the Spirit in a way that no words can capture. It is felt in the stillness between thoughts, in the quiet space where we are no longer trying to figure everything out, but simply allowing things to be as they are. This movement is not something external that we must reach for. It is already within us, waiting to be recognized. But recognition does not come through effort or striving. It comes through deep listening, through quieting the mind, through allowing ourselves to rest in the present moment. When we do this, something shifts. We no longer feel separate from the divine. We realize that we are part of its unfolding movement. There is a great freedom in this realization. When we are no longer trying to fit the infinite into the limits of thought, we become open to experiencing it directly. Life itself becomes a revelation. The simplest moments, a breath of wind, a moment of silence, a glance at the sky, are filled with deep significance. We no longer need proof or explanations because we know beyond words that the Spirit is moving through everything. To live in alignment with this movement is to live with trust, with openness, with a sense of deep connection. It is to let go of rigid beliefs and allow wisdom to arise from within. It is to realize that we do not need to figure everything out because the deeper intelligence that moves all things is already guiding us. In this space of presence, we do not need to seek answers. They reveal themselves naturally. We do not need to search for the Spirit. It is already here. All that is required is for us to be still enough, open enough, and free enough from the constraints of thought to truly experience it. Surrendering to the present moment is one of the most profound ways to experience the movement of the Spirit of God. The divine does not exist in the past or the future. It moves in the eternal now. Yet, as human beings, we are often caught in the illusion of time, living either in memories of what has been or in projections of what is to come. This constant mental movement prevents us from truly experiencing the sacredness of the present moment, where the Spirit is most alive. The mind is conditioned to resist the present. It clings to past experiences, both pleasant and painful, and constantly seeks security in an imagined future. It tells us that peace, fulfillment, or divine connection will come at some later point, once we have achieved something, solved a problem, or reached a specific goal. But this is a deception. The Spirit of God is not something to be found in the future, nor something that was lost in the past. It is here now, waiting to be recognized. Surrendering to the now does not mean passively accepting everything that happens. It does not mean we stop taking action or striving for improvement. Rather, it means we stop resisting what is. Most of our suffering does not come from external events, but from our inner resistance to them. When we judge, complain, or wish things were different, we create an inner conflict between ourselves and reality. In that state of resistance, we are unable to sense the flow of divine presence. When we truly surrender to the present moment, something profound happens. We begin to experience a deep inner peace, even in the midst of external chaos. This peace is not dependent on circumstances. It is not something that comes and goes. It is the natural state of being when we are fully aligned with the movement of the Spirit. In this state, there is no fear, no anxiety, no need to control. There is only presence, clear, open, and deeply alive. To surrender to the now, we must first develop awareness of when we are resisting. We must learn to observe our own thoughts and emotions without getting lost in them. When we feel tension, stress, or frustration, it is often a sign that we are resisting reality in some way. The key is not to suppress these feelings, but to bring awareness to them. The moment we become conscious of our resistance, it begins to dissolve. Awareness itself is transformative. One of the most powerful ways to enter the present moment is through deep attention. When we fully focus on whatever is happening right now, whether it is the sound of the wind, the sensation of breathing, or the feeling of the ground beneath our feet, we shift out of mental abstraction and into direct experience. This shift is subtle yet life-changing. The more we practice this presence, the more we begin to notice that the divine is always moving through everything. The Spirit of God does not move in a distant, abstract way. It is intimately connected to every aspect of life. It moves in the rhythm of our breath, in the beating of our heart, in the silence between words. It is present in the smallest details of existence, yet so often overlooked because the mind is elsewhere. When we surrender to the now, we awaken to this presence. We realize that we are not separate from it, but part of its eternal flow. Living in surrender does not mean we stop making plans or setting goals. It simply means we stop attaching our sense of peace and fulfillment to an imagined future. We act, but we are not anxious about results. We plan, but we remain open to change. We engage with life fully, yet without resistance to whatever unfolds. This is the paradox of surrender. By letting go of the need to control, we find true freedom. This surrender is not something to be achieved once and for all. It is a continuous practice, a way of being. There will be moments when we slip back into resistance, when we fall into worry or regret. But each time we bring ourselves back to the present, we reconnect with the movement of the Spirit. Each moment is an opportunity to surrender anew, to align with the divine presence that is always here. The greatest gift of surrender is the realization that we do not have to struggle to find God. The Spirit is not far away, not something we must reach for. It is already moving within us, already guiding us, already present in this very moment. All that is required is for us to be here, now, open and receptive. When we truly surrender to the present, we discover that we have never been separate from the divine, only distracted from it. As we become conscious of the movement of the Spirit of God, our perception of life undergoes a profound transformation. The world we once saw through the lens of fear, struggle, and limitation begins to appear different, not because the external circumstances necessarily change, but because our inner awareness expands. The Spirit does not impose itself upon us. It does not force us to see or experience life in a certain way. Rather, it is always moving, always available, waiting for us to awaken to its presence. And when we do, a deep transformation begins to unfold within us. This transformation is not about adopting a new belief system or following a set of religious rules. It is not something that happens through intellectual effort or personal striving. Instead, it arises naturally as our awareness deepens. As we shift from a state of unconsciousness, where we are lost in thought, fear, and resistance, to a state of presence, we begin to see that life itself is infused with divine intelligence. The challenges we once viewed as obstacles are now seen as opportunities for growth. The moments we once rushed through without awareness become sacred. One of the most immediate effects of this awakening is the dissolution of fear. Fear is rooted in our identification with the mind, with its endless stream of thoughts about what might happen, what went wrong in the past, and how we compare to others. It keeps us trapped in a cycle of worry and dissatisfaction, always seeking security in something external. But as we become conscious of the Spirit's movement within us, we start to recognize that we are part of something far greater than our personal fears and concerns. We realize that we are not separate from life, but deeply connected to it. And in that recognition, fear loses its grip. This does not mean that difficult situations will no longer arise. but our response to them changes. Instead of reacting with resistance, we learn to meet each moment with a deep sense of presence. We trust in the intelligence of the divine flow, knowing that even in the midst of uncertainty, we are supported. This trust is not based on blind faith, but on direct experience. The more we align ourselves with the present moment, the more we feel the quiet strength of the Spirit moving through us. As fear dissolves, so does suffering. Most suffering is not caused by external events, but by the mind's resistance to what is. We suffer not because of what happens, but because of our thoughts about what happens. When we are unconscious, we resist life, wishing things were different, fearing what may come next. But when we become aware of the Spirit's presence, we stop fighting reality. We accept what is, not with resignation, but with openness. In that openness, suffering diminishes. Another transformation that occurs is the awakening of deep peace. This peace is not dependent on circumstances. It is not something that can be given or taken away by the world. It arises from within, from our direct connection to the divine presence. It is a peace that remains even in difficult times, because it is not based on external conditions but on the realization of our true nature. The Spirit of God moves through everything, and when we are present, we feel that movement as a deep inner stillness, a presence that is beyond words. This peace is accompanied by a sense of profound clarity. When we are lost in thought, our perception is clouded by opinions, judgments, and assumptions. But when we are fully present, we see life as it is, without distortion. We recognize the beauty in ordinary moments, the sacredness in everyday experiences. Life itself becomes our teacher, guiding us in ways that the mind alone never could. Perhaps the most beautiful transformation that occurs when we become aware of the Spirit's movement is the emergence of love. True, unconditional love. This love is not based on personal attachment or external validation. It is not something we seek from others. It is something that naturally arises within us when we are in harmony with the present moment. When we recognize that the divine moves through all things, we see others not as separate from us, but as part of the same sacred flow of existence. This recognition dissolves judgment, replaces resentment with compassion, and turns ordinary interactions into moments of connection and grace. In this state of awareness, we no longer feel the need to control everything. We trust in the unfolding of life, knowing that the Spirit moves through all things in perfect harmony. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. It means that our actions arise from a place of clarity and presence rather than fear and resistance. We live with purpose but without anxiety. We engage with life fully but without attachment to outcomes. Ultimately, transformation through awareness is not something that happens once. It is an ongoing process. Each moment presents an opportunity to awaken, to align more deeply with the movement of the Spirit, to see life with fresh eyes. And with each step in this journey, we move closer to the realization that the divine is not something distant, not something separate, but the very essence of who we are. In the stillness of the present moment, in the silent space beyond thought, the Spirit of God moves, always guiding, always flowing. It is not something to be attained in the future, nor something we have lost in the past. It is ever present, waiting for us to become aware of it. When we free ourselves from the mind's endless need to analyze, define, and control, we begin to experience the divine movement directly. It is in the rhythm of our breath, in the quiet unfolding of life, in the peace that arises when we surrender to what is. The Spirit does not impose itself upon us, nor does it need to be chased or grasped. It is here, now moving through us, within us, and around us. The moment we become aware of this movement, our perception of life transforms. Fear dissolves, suffering diminishes, and a deep inner peace takes its place. We realize that we are not separate from life, but an inseparable part of its divine flow. In this awareness, love arises naturally, not as something we seek, but as something we are. To live in alignment with the Spirit's movement is to live with openness, trust, and deep presence. It is to recognize that each moment, no matter how ordinary, is sacred. It is to let go of resistance and embrace life as it is, knowing that we are supported by an intelligence greater than ourselves. And so the invitation remains. Be still. Become present. Open yourself to the movement of the Spirit, not as an abstract concept, but as a living reality. When you do, you will see that it has been here all along, waiting for you to awaken.